Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch Kick Choke Chat. My name is Sean Benson. I'm one of your hosts. I love every single episode we do, truly. Obviously, you will prefer some guests over others. We love them all equally. My fingers are not crossed below the camera. We really do. But the host chat is what this show, for me, really all is about because we created this show and we're really just trying to capture that feeling of driving in a car together and shooting the shit. So I love these host chats, and I know you will too. And I'm so glad you're here with us tonight. And we're going to take a little longer. We're not going to do the old school forever intros, but I just want to actually take a sec to talk about Sensei Suino's martial arts resume. We don't really do that anymore. This isn't just a charming, gorgeous, fit avatar for how everyone should stand at the foothills of senility. This is an eighth degree black belt in Iaido, a seventh degree black belt in Judo, a sixth degree black belt in Japanese Jiu Jitsu, a fourth degree black belt in karate. Um, he asked me to whisper that. He's incredible at karate, and he's a shodan in Kyudo and in Aikido. And we take for granted sometimes when we move in these kind of circles with the types of events we do, how much work, how much time, how much effort, how much you have to be giving back to get anything resembling even one of those ranks. So I just want to say, Sensei Suino, I do take that for granted because we're friends, but it's incredible, it's impressive, and all jokes aside, you're an absolute role model for how to move forward in this world. And how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I think it's a testament to stubbornness, right? Just start stuff and don't quit. Although I have to say, some of those martial arts you mentioned, I haven't done in a very long time. But uh, man, I wake up every day just ecstatic to be able to do martial arts for this long and with this great group of people. And yeah, man, it's fun. Everybody should do what we do. And they should stick with it for a really, really long time. So anyway, thank you very much for the introduction. Um, am I to introduce Sensei Dauphin today, or are you going to do it?
I'm going to give that to you to do, so we can go around the horn the way we used to.
All right, well, that's kind of fun. Yeah, we're going back old school, my friends. Uh, and I don't know Sensei Dauphin's complete resume, but if I'm not mistaken, and keep in mind, I've been kicked and punched and thrown on the head a lot, but Sensei Dauphin is a seventh dan in karate, I believe, and a fourth dan in Iaido. And
You don't have to
let's
say
see.
the other one.
Okay, well, very accomplished already, BJJ aficionado, and there's no question in my mind that he will achieve all kinds of high ranks eventually. And if you're not sure, just go and roll with him, and you will discover that he's a long way from the bottom of that pantheon of
Mhm.
martial artists, if you ask me. But also, just one of the most steadfast, hardworking, loyal martial artists I've ever met, and I've met a lot, and also a co-conspirator in a lot of craziness in terms of events, adventures, and just sitting around the table or sitting in a car or sitting on this video screen talking. We've been doing that for, I don't know, is it 35 years yet? Getting close, and not going to give up until one of us is no longer able to do it. How you doing, Randy?
I'm good, Sensei. Thank you for that
Mhm.
introduction. And yeah, this is my 36th year uh, in karate. 36 years this year. I was 18 years old when I wandered in the dojo for Sensei Legacy, and I thought I was like capable and tough, and I figured out really quick that I wasn't. Um, and in 36 years, I get to introduce Sensei Legacy. I'm very grateful to be able to do that. Uh, Sensei Legacy is the 10th then. He's 10th then in Shorin Karate Jitsu. He's a 10th then in Hakatsudo, which are kind of one and the same. He got graded to a 10th then from Anthony Sandoval in both of those arts. Um, other things you might not know about Sensei Legacy because it's been a long time. He started, original teacher was Harold Warden, trained with him for maybe about a year. And Harold Warden was good enough to realize that Sensei Legacy was a different type of student and needed maybe a little bit more. And so not only did he pass him along to Benny Allen, but he actually paid for him to go, which is that's really an incredible thing. Like I think about that often. I owe, and a lot of people owe Harold Warden a debt of gratitude for that gesture, because that really impacted a lot of generations of martial artists after that happened. So, and then when Benny Allen retired, Sense Legacy trained for 10 years with this little known martial artist named Richard Kim. He trained with him for a long time, who I think when Sense Legacy and I were talking about it a week or so ago, recently, like, rankings came out and he was like the number 2 or number 4, number 5 martial artist of like all time, they say, of all time greats. Richard Kim was ranked in there, and Sense Legacy trained with him. And I've been really lucky to have been able to meet Richard Kim. I've been really lucky to have trained with Anthony Sandoval since Sandoval was Sense Legacy. And I really just want to say, when I try and think about any element of my life that Sense Legacy hasn't permeated, I can't think of anything like where he hasn't either given me some insight, some instruction, taught me something, or maybe we had like a huge belly laugh over something. Because in mine and Sense Legacy's relationship, there's a lot of seriousness, a lot of work, a lot of discipline, a lot of talks about growing the art. But I don't think it'll surprise. I can't think of a time when I didn't get together with Sense Legacy and we weren't like belly laughing at least once or twice when we got together about something. I'm really proud he's my teacher. I love him with all my heart, and I just love doing all this stuff that we've done together. How you doing tonight, Sense Legacy?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe Sensei, since we're going around the horn, Benson doesn't get any light shined on him too much, probably because he's an actor and he gets lots of light shined on him. But maybe you could just say a couple words about Benzo tonight, Sensei.
Yeah, always in my estimation of I estimated that he is a good martial artist. You know, like from the very beginning, you usually wait for people to break out, but he has always been an excellent martial artist, in Shorin-ryu mainly, and a good fighter. Like he's, it's not even unknown. He just come out to be a good fighter. We fought everywhere in Los Angeles, to here, different places like that. And he now runs a good school in Toronto, and all of his students are images of himself. They're all really good. None of them are mediocre, or he manages to wedge people in of different walks of life and make them good martial artists. And also, like, you can't leave out that he's also a great actor. You know, like, he got me to, you know, you and I were, he was in this biker movie, and because we were riding bikes, he got us a job as extras in there. And one time we're doing this big scene in a garage. I mentioned this before. We're doing this big scene in a garage, and after it was over, they opened the garage doors, and all the extras and actors were walking away. And then the director stood up and he looked at the cameraman. He said, "You know, we're really lucky to have that guy here." And, you know, that's not from my mouth. It's from the mouth of the people who direct and coach actors. So he's a genuinely fine human being.
Thanks, Hanji. I just want to say, if I'm any good at fighting, it's because of you and Sensei. That's it. That's where I got all of it. So thank you. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, on our host chat, there's the button in the bottom that we normally say, if you put in a question, it'll come to us. But on our host chat, what we'd like is that you actually ask the question on camera. It's our little special thing we get to do because we have a little more time, and we love to see who's there. Sensei Dauphin just put in the bottom. You can see the red button there. So we'd love to have your questions. These host chats are a free for all in terms of topics, so we can shift gears entirely. It doesn't have to be what we're talking about. We'd love to see you. We'd love to have you. If you're uncomfortable being on camera like me, that's fine. You can ask not to be on camera, and we won't nudge or push you. It's your choice, but we would love to have you if you're up for that. And for everybody watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe, hit that like, fight in the comments. I went through the other day and I saw some of our earlier videos, and we got a lot of traffic there, and we hit 1,000 subscribers this week, which might not sound like a lot, but these milestones, I know this from my TikTok channel. Every time you hit a new number, that means there's more people, and that means it gets out broader, sooner, quicker. So we're really excited about this show. We take it very seriously, but also we have a great time doing it. So thank you for being here, and we would like to see you tonight. Sensei Dauphin, you got a topic for us? You want to kick us off?
I did have one thought, that a question to go around the horn on. And because we're all hosts, but we've all also had the tables turned on us and had a show for us. So we've all had to answer the 10 questions. But the one that we haven't had to answer is a new one that you started throwing in there periodically.
Oh, yes.
Which the question is, if none of the martial arts that you do right now existed, what would be a martial artist or a martial art that you would do? And just pontificate on that a little bit. Why would you want to do that martial art? And so I'm going to start with you, Ben, since you punched it to me. So what would be a martial art? You can't do BJJ. You can't do karate. You can't do Iaido. What are you doing?
What am I doing? Oh, I love this question, and it's so funny because for all the 10 questions, I've thought about them so much except for this one.
Don't say Aikido with Steven Seagal.
No, I won't. Do you know what I would love to do? And honestly, pardon me, Sensei Suino, I'm not sure how practical it is. But when I think about the joy I have shooting guns, I would love to do Kyudo. I would love to just go, you know what? I'm gonna go find that big bow and walk that path and find that Zen. I think I would get so much pleasure from that. And when I say the real world, like one thing I love about doing the grappling and the stand up is that I feel like it encompasses a real full fighting system. But I don't know. I just would, it's like, how do you want to spend your time? And I would like to spend it drawing that bow.
Awesome. Suino Sensei, of the 762,000 martial arts you've already done, if none of them existed anymore, is there one left, like Cossack horseback riding or something like that you'd like to do?
I don't know if you know, there's a scene in, oh my gosh, which one is it? Is it Hidden Fortress? There's a scene in one of the Kurosawa movies where, oh hell, what's the great samurai actor's name? I'm having a blank moment.
Toshiro Mifune?
Yeah, Toshiro Mifune jumps on a horse, and he's holding his sword up in this position, and he's charging while kind of standing in the stirrups of the horse. It's the coolest scene in any movie anywhere ever made, and that has nothing to do with the question you just asked me. But you did say Cossack horseback riding, and that's what made me think of that. If I, at the moment, and this is like asking me what I want on my pizza, I'll have a different answer every day. But right now, as I sit here, I'm going to say Muay Thai. I think it'd be really cool to do Muay Thai. I love watching those guys strike, and I like the guys that are really accomplished in Muay Thai when they come in the UFC. The way they strike, the way they move is really cool. And yeah, so that's something I would do if I had nothing else.
Yeah. So, but specifically, Sensei, what turns your crank about
Sorry,
how
John.
they move? Like, is it the kicking? Is it what?
Dominic Cruz is the guy that first turned my head when I was watching him in the UFC, and he has this wonderful way of standing up in front of the opponent and moving on these angles, those oblique angles, right? Moving. He's moving this way. He's going to throw that kick. He's going to throw that strike. Moving over here, never stopping, always busy, doing the teeks, whatever they call those, the teeps and the knees and the elbows, and it reminds me of the flywheel system, right? Which is comes from a Chinese version of kickboxing, and it just looks It just looks like a riot. It just looks like fun physical stuff to do to me.
Sensei, I just want to chime in because with when I watched Bloodsport as a kid, right? I've mentioned the Bloodsport and the Karate Kid were my two eras, major influences. My favorite opponent of his was the Muay Thai guy. I pulled up the picture and I just loved the way he'd stand there and do the walk. And I remember thinking, I don't know what that is, but other than what Van Damme's doing, that's the best. And it
Hmm.
was that awkward movement, getting the shins ready to check kicks. Very cool.
Yeah, man.
Let's not forget that guy was acting. So before I go to Sense Legacy and ask this question, because it's really hard I can't even picture Sense Legacy doing another martial art other than the ones that he's doing. Like in my mind, I try well, so I'm just going to say the one that I've just constantly had this interest in is capoeira. I don't know. I think I could have been okay doing that martial art. I like the history. It has a really unique and interesting history. It's very physical, has that really nice familial type of relationship in that martial art. That'd be the one. And obviously, like, just the acrobatics in it are pretty cool. Like it's got some pretty high style points as far as a martial art go. I like it also that it's a very sneaky martial art. It's one of those ones that while you're watching the thing that they're doing, some other thing is happening that you're not realizing would be happening to you, which is one of the things I really like about capoeira. But anyway, since Lacey, what about you? None of the martial arts that you do, no Iaido, no Hakatsudo, no karate, what's a martial art that you think you'd be interested in that you would have liked to have poured yourself into?
I'm going to have to agree with Sean this time. I'm looking at my age right now. I'm looking for something a little bit different. I do EI to just calm myself, and really, I don't have to worry about fighting anybody. I don't have to, or teaching even because uh, I just do it just for calming myself and everything. But uh, and it's the same thing I would be looking for now, and that would be Kudo. I mentioned that before, I think. I'd love to be able to get that calmness and uh, that those classical stances and looks of that art. I don't know anything about it, so I can't say why or what I would get from it or anything, but that's what I assume, somebody my age would be more like harmonizing, calming my body, mind, and spirit, being able to completely relax and even hit the target. So,
Um,
I'm sure you'd be able to hit it, Sensei. And listen, there's nothing disparaging about, I'm not trying to disparage any martial art. Even when I made that crack about Steven Seagal and Aikido, like, listen, Aikido is a good martial art. I'm just mostly making fun of the fact that Steven Seagal has eaten himself into it. But I'm really glad, Sensei, that you didn't say, I'd want to do Tai Chi. And not because you wouldn't be good at it. I just can't picture you in that uniform moving around super slow and like I can't picture.
no, I actually did Tai Chi in San Francisco with Richard Kim. And like that, I found it so hard. Like it's a hard art. It's calming and uh, it really demands a lot from you. I if I hadn't started with karate or something hard and fast, if I had started with Tai Chi, I don't think I would have stuck it out. Just not my personality, I guess.
Hey, listen, Sean, before we move on, I do want to change gears just really quick, if that's okay. Something dawned on me that we've mentioned a couple times when we were all talking about our dates and stuff like that. And I said, oh, 36 years. I just realized that tomorrow is actually Sense Legacy's anniversary in karate because he joined February 28th was his first day of karate, and it's 54 years ago that he joined karate. I know that because I measure him by my age because I'm 53 and he was in karate a year before I was born. So that's how I know that. So I just trying to throw that out to everybody. I didn't include that in the intro and it popped into my mind now.
Thank you, Randy. Somebody give you a good hint on that.
That's incredible, Hanchi. Before we go on, I know I'm chipping in on this topic a lot, but I really haven't thought about it. There's one we haven't talked about much. So I'm taking for granted that I know how to fight, but if I can't ever have studied these arts, I might check out some Sambo. When I see Sambo videos, I'm a big fan. I like what they're doing. I like the way they count an exchange as a win. You know, it includes a lot. You got a smile there, Sensei. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking you like the high boots and the tight
I
shorts.
love the high boots and the tight shorts. This is why I love you, because aside from the karate, you know me better than anyone. It's literally that.
Heaven for Sean is wearing a karate gi and belt with tight shorts.
And little fucking
Go up to your
yes.
knee.
Yes. Tuck the boys in. Let's go. Okay, I actually do have a question. I had a little fun tonight because I was thinking about different topics and I went to ChatGPT and I asked what are some of the most contentious topics.
Ooh.
And a lot of them we've discussed, you know, like traditional martial arts applicable on the street, blah, you know, there's no reason to go down that road. But there was an interesting one, and I actually really want to hear your thoughts. I don't even think it's that contentious, but I'll start with you, Sensei Suino. What in modern day, and I'm not including firearms, is the point of weapons training and the validity of it? Because that was one of the contentious things, according to ChatGPT. A lot of people are like, eh.
Like why they're suggesting that there's no reason to train them.
Yeah, because if you're not fighting with bows or, you know, even the Boken fighting, you're not actually hitting. So is there pressure testing that can make it valid? So, you know, I'm adding that to what ChatGPT said, but I think that would be why people might question it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some crossovers, right? You can train in a 4-foot staff and then have an umbrella if you're thinking about self-defense. But I really think, uh, at least for me and a lot of people I know, the personal development stuff, just like Hanshi said, you know, train in Kyudo for the calmness, for the tranquility, train in Kobudo with the bow for learning structure, for physical fitness, for getting control of your mind, for learning to be in the moment. I think there's a lot of reasons other than self-defense, but I think anything you do that's martial and has a weapon is going to have some crossover to self-defense skills.
Yeah. Do you think that people, I'm not talking about you, but do you think people can, like, I'm thinking of direct lineage from samurai, direct lineage, even when we talk about, you know, someone with an oar in Okinawa genuinely unaliving a person with that. Do you think that's imparted in most schools that do weapons? Because all the weapons people we know are fucking badass.
Yeah, what do you mean? Can you be more specific on that?
Well, again, this is a term I came up with. There can be a cosplay aspect the further away we get from pressure testing.
For sure.
Do you think, I don't know, it's a weird thing to say because of who we surround ourselves with, who all take this intensely seriously and have a martial thing. But do you think that martial thing is included in most people who train weapons, period?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a spectrum, though. I think there's almost none in some people, and then there's a lot, and a lot of it has to do with the mindset of the school and the coach or sensei. You know, you see some of those really acrobatic, sort of performative martial arts that are really exciting, but they completely lack, in our opinion, martial virtue or value. The truth is, they don't completely lack it. If you do something that vigorous and build your stances and build your legs and you're that acrobatic, it's going to help you with self-defense on some level. Right? There's
Yep.
any physical exercise, but as it starts to move more and more toward martial arts, and then as it gets more and more toward pressure testing, and then the mindset of the school and the sensei, it's a spectrum. So it's all beneficial.
Mhm.
And it's kind of how much do you want? And then where do we draw the line? You know, all of us draw the line somewhere beyond which we will not go because it just seems like it's all, you know, when it's 51% cosplay, I'm not doing it. Right? But when it's 51% martial valor, I might still do it. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes total sense. And I had a girl in my karate club right before I started class last night who was punching the bag very nicely. And I was like, "You fight?" You know, and she was so drawn to the gi. She was not loving her Muay Thai training and she's going to come check out class next week. But I said to her, like, look, this is 200-year-old pajama workout gear. Like and we love it. And so I like what you say that there can be, and for me, I love the roots. You know, without the roots, it wouldn't be exciting to me. But I think for me, and I'll answer my own question before I go to Hanshi Legacy is I don't know anyone personally who trains weapons who doesn't do something else they pressure test, and then you see that in the weapon. You know, I'll use Sensei Dofan as an example when he was doing some cuts, and um, one of the students' wives was like, "Why does he look like he's the one out there who would actually be chopping through bodies and cutting heads off?" I was like, "Well, because you know he's doing this as a true, well, I'll let him describe it, but a true extension of a killing art." Hanshi Legacy, we'll go back to the basic question, you know, for someone who does or doesn't do another art, what do you see as the value in 2025 of weapons training with these old weapons?
Well, I think Setsy Smith said it very well. You want to expand your mind, have a different interest, you know, like somebody who plays baseball and then plays hockey. So there are a lot of different weapons. But, you know, um, being that we're in a defensive art or fighting art, you know, you can be caught in a situation where you have several people and you find a stick on the ground or somebody breaks in your house and your wife or somebody had to defend themselves in a life and death situation. The use of any, you know, I hate to say knives and that, but any implement in the kitchen or in your house. So just like karate, really, I think the statistics say that during a lifetime, you will only really be, on average, you'll only be somebody will only you'll only be in a situation where your life will be threatened 2 times in
Mm.
your life. But we still train in martial arts because you know, um, say it only happens to you once and you lose your life or you lose an eye or something. You know, plus there's so many much more benefits than just self-defense, right?
Thanks, Hanshi. And I've mentioned this like 100 episodes ago on the show, but Joe Rogan always talked about how he'd wear baggy, stretchy pants out to the bar every night just in case he got in a fight and had to kick someone in the head. He goes, I never once got in a fight. I just wore jeans that didn't fit well for 15 years. He goes, but I do it again because that's how much I cared. And I love that.
Yeah, it's like buying insurance and you never get in an accident,
Yeah.
sort of like that.
Sensei Dauphin, I love the way you approach weapons. What's your take on this?
I think the premise of the question is actually stupid. Like that
Yeah.
there's no that's like saying there's no war today, so we should just get rid of all the soldiers, right? Like there's no, so you don't just train when you know there's a situation coming. You train because there might be a situation coming. And you don't know, like they're talking about the premise of the question is based on walking down the sidewalk and having a pair of tonfas with you while but there's that's like that's a small sliver of what a conflict could be and where you could be confronted by it. Like, I mean, conceivably, me sitting in here might be a place where challenges in dojos happen often. People walk in and they think they're good and they think, well, I mean, you could see in the reflection, like, sorry, come on in here. You think I'm going to do my karate on you? Like, you come in and you start trying to roughhouse with me or one of my students, there's a plethora of like party favors in this dojo that I would happily grab a hold of to show you where the exit to the room was, and help you out with that. You know, chances are never zero. That's what I would say, right? Chances are never zero. Allegedly, like, I mean, you break in my house, allegedly there could be Okinawan weapons and swords and things all over the house. Like, it might be a gauntlet for you to get from my bedroom window back out the front door, right? Every step of the way, you might be finding yourself confronted by some different historical artifact that's displayed in my home. And I do go back to what you said, Sean. Like, I actually remember Suino Sensei saying this to me way back. Like, I mean, probably like 20 years ago or 22 years ago, he said, Reddy, your Iaido benefits from the fact that you do a style of martial arts, karate, where you actually fight. And so in your brain, you know, the consequences of what happens when you make mistakes. So if you do pick up Okinawa weapons with the wrong mindset, or you pick up the sword with the wrong mindset, then of course you're probably just cosplay, wasting your time. But if you have a military mindset, you have a martial arts mindset, and you're training and preparation for something that may or may not ever happen, then they're not useless. And they're actually a very good endeavor for people to bring themselves into. And I would encourage people to learn multiple Okinawan weapons, regardless of the martial art that you do. If you do capoeira, it's probably not a bad idea to learn how to use a bow staff or tonfa. And the other thing I would say about that, Sean, is the last thing I'll say before I turn it back is, if you know how tonfas work, you know how sais work, you know how a sword works, then even if you have it or you don't, you're going to be better able to defend yourself against somebody who stands there in front of you with something that's similar. You'll understand the range, you'll understand the mechanics, the direction that it's going to move, whether it's now a baseball bat or a stick or a rolled up newspaper instead of a tombo, or and that's where I take it.
Well, I want to go back to you, Sensei Dauphin, because I remember very clearly a conversation we had, and I think it was Nick McLaren, Sensei Nick McLaren out in Vancouver, who runs the club there, where he was talking with you or gave you the book Meditations on Violence. Is that right? And then you were talking about, you're like, someone comes in my door, I might pick up that chair leg. Like, it's what's at hand that makes most sense. And so I actually really like the way you just framed all that. Like, we don't drop into a stance like this necessarily. Like, that would be insane. You know,
Like, said that once. He said, if you ever fought me in real life, you'd think I was a dirty fighter. He said that when I was like yellow belt. Like, you know, he also said once, if you think Matsumura carried a sword around on his side, do you think he'd take his sword out of his belt and put it on the ground to fight you with his karate? No, he'd cut your arm and your head off, and then then if his sword broke, he'd fight you with his karate.
I have a next question if we're up for it. So this is my last one from Chat GPT, but I like it because I have my own thoughts on it that have varied over time. And it is point sparring valid? No, obviously it's valid unto itself, but what does it offer? Does it offer anything that matters? And Sensei Dauphin, if you don't mind, I'll go right back to you just because I see you nodding and you've really helped guide my thinking on this. So what's the point? You know, we know in the Olympics that a lot of people complained when the guy who won was the guy who got knocked out. So what is the validity? I'm not talking about the Olympics now, of point sparring.
Okay, so when you were asking the question, my mind was going to, how does it help you with real conflict? So, I mean, the validity of point sparring is an athletic endeavor, just like any other athletic endeavor. I mean, there's ping pong in the Olympics, right? So, so it's an athletic endeavor with a rule set, just like anybody else. So if you follow the rules and you do the stuff, then you deserve to be the champion of that thing. I, of course, think that my mind always goes to combat, right? Like outside of a sports endeavor. And then that's where I think people conflate like point sparring with self-defense, with like, and they say, oh, that's useless because of this and that. So yeah, like, I mean, in Canada, when we got that big snowstorm, if your best combat technique is a question mark kick to the back of the head, you're probably going to be lost when it comes to, but I would argue for personal self-defense that the philosophies of point sparring are exactly what you need to defend yourself. They are exactly what you need. You need to be able to quickly close the distance with one or two techniques and end that whole situation. And I think point sparring prepares you for that on a very high level, especially if you're fighting against other really seasoned, good competitors. Your reaction time and your ability to close the distance and land a technique with focus and timing and power is going to be way different than, say, a philosophy where it's combination based striking, right? Where they're trying to wear you down with, and I'm not saying, like, obviously boxers and kickboxers know how to deliver, they know how to read a fight to deliver one killer technique, of course.
Mhm.
But that's where I take the value of my point sparring. How it's benefited me is that if you stand like one stride from me inside of my critical distance and you start lipping off at me, and I got my back to the wall, like I'm going to move a little different than the average human that you're going to stand in front of.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate that. I love asking these questions because I really do just listen. Sensei Suino, let's go to you next for the validity of point sparring, or you can take it to, point throwing, wherever you want to go with it.
I mean, yeah, 100% point sparring is definitely valuable when it comes to training for street fighting or self-defense. It trains all the things you want: athleticism, timing, trying to score quickly and not get scored on. You could argue that it doesn't necessarily teach you to take a wallop, although I've seen a few people take wallops lately in point sparring. But it's interesting. There's also the kind of extended stay inside and fight sparring that's not point sparring. And I almost think that if you really want to train for street fighting or self-defense, you probably ought to have that in your arsenal too, because you can't promise that every time you come in and hit somebody, they're gonna fall down. You're gonna get that one guy, and you've probably all run into that guy that's almost impervious to a solid strike or just doesn't feel pain, and then he's going to be in there he or she's going to be in there dueling it out with you. So you want to be able to stay in there, train your ability to withstand strikes, to move through pain, to maintain the awareness and the concentration and the stamina long enough to get through that. So I think point sparring is valuable. I think it'd be made even more valuable by staying in the trenches with some of your partners and going at it.
Love that. I'll give the last word to Hanshi. I just want to throw
Sorry,
out,
Todd.
yeah,
I want to just say that I do think that continuous sparring is superior to stop-start point sparring. Like, I think continuous sparring with the right philosophy, but I'm just saying point sparring is not it's not valuable. Like, it's valuable for somebody's arsenal.
thanks, Sensei. I just looked up because I want to make sure everyone knows how to find it. Episode 33 of Punch Kick Choke Chat. We had Leo Laux on, and he said something I've never forgot, which is if you hit someone with your best technique and they don't go down, you better go practice your best technique. And I think about that because, when I think about the tournament we had a couple weeks ago, this is our classical martial virtue counts for a point. I didn't fight anybody who couldn't break ribs with a punch, right? So the point sparring, and also Sensei Suino, what you just talked about in terms of exchanges, there were a number of times where I'd go 1, 2, 3 techniques deep and nothing landed, so no one got a point. And so I do agree with Sensei Dauphin about the continuous sparring, and I think the ability to have exchanges, not just play tag, but yeah, like if you're reffing in a way that nobody needs to have a broken rib or a broken nose, but these are people who can hit like that, as per Leo Laux, that's a really good and repeatable test of who's going to get that moneymaker in. I've grown to love it. I did question it for a bit, but what I realized I was questioning was just how refs were throwing out their flags, things that were blocked or didn't land. punching an arm and getting a point. But that's not the problem with point sparring. That's just those refs who don't count what I consider martial virtue in the same way. Hanshi Legacy, what about you? Point sparring, is it valid? And if so, why?
To me, there's two sides of it. Is if uh, there is a point fighting where it's a game of tag. So you don't even need to close your fist as long as you get inside the 4-inch, area that you have to get into, you get a point. I see some people getting hit with body punches that are scoring. That's the sport of it. But say I'm just going to take what I know, an example of Randy and myself fighting for, I forget, from when I was 40 till I was 65, and then I stopped fighting. You learn a lot of things from just as a beginner, just to learn to stand in front of a bigger person than you are and getting the intestinal fortitude to stand there without even throwing a punch. You can see it in some person's personality when the first time they're taking karate, to learn how to be a bit braver. They just stand there and you can see they're really intimidated or afraid. So that's something right there, just standing up and facing somebody. Right? And then during all that, you have to learn to calm your mind. If you can't calm your mind, you can't let your training through. So those are other things that people don't even realize is happening, And then strategy, doing things like throwing a fake to make a person move in a certain way, and so you could land your deadly blow, we'll say. So, and as far as when Randy was saying that having to hit multiple times over, my witness is Randy sitting there, over the 25, 30 years that him and I fought, we have rarely went by 3, punch his block, his punch my block, and me block and punch him back. It rarely ever even gets there. And instead of a point, what we did was, when you could recognize, if I recognized that Randy threw a punch that would have dropped me or rendered me unconscious, I would step back and bow. So he didn't make the decision whether where he may misjudge. I was the one who would say, that would have hurt me. And only one time in how many years, I don't know, 35, 40 years, did we ever go once 7 deep. And at the end of it, we both just stood there and stood in that glory just for that moment, one time in all those years. So that type of point or recognition of a point fighting is really good. It's really
Love
good.
that. Yeah. Sensei Dauphin, you had one more idea on this topic?
Yeah, because a lot of what we're talking about is a martial artist versus another martial artist, a competitive event, fighting another martial artist in the dojo. That is all us training to be able to overcome a situation where the person is probably not a martial artist. And so when you're talking about point sparring, if you can come in the dojo here and somehow you can land a nice, clean, powerful point on Sensei Copeland, I see he's on the call. Good luck if you think you can. But if you can, you're probably going to be pretty okay against some meathead who has had a couple of street fights in their life. And your point karate, being able to close the distance and pick a target and land with power and precision, is going to serve you well in real life. So we're not talking about, can you go do point sparring and then go fight Conor McGregor? No, you probably can't unless you can do what Muhammad Ali did to Sonny Liston, right? Like you could argue that was a point fight. Like that is an example. Their second fight, you could argue that Ollie knocked out Sonny Liston with just one technique. And they said it was a phantom technique and it was fixed, but now you know it wasn't, because you can go on YouTube and see all the breakdowns and see the sweat pour off of his head. And it was not a combination. It was one technique. Pow. And Sonny Liston was out unconscious. So I guess point fighting.
Absolutely. Well, also, one of the most famous Japanese pride fights was Don Fry versus Takayama, the big blonde guy, and they both hold on to each other. And they have what every guy thinks he's going to do in the bar, which is the slugfest. They fire at each other probably 50, if not 100 times, but they have the cardio for it and they have the chin for it. And I think a lot of people think that's what their fighting's going to look like. So that's the guys who are like, point sparring sucks. Is like, just because you watched a pride fight from the 90s doesn't mean you're one of them. And I'm not saying, like we're talking about, that some of those guys might not be okay, but it's both the cardio and the chin. Most people could not throw that many punches in a row right now if you paid them $1,000.
Yeah. And they also weren't getting hit clean.
That's right.
They had a chin, but they also were moving, stepping, moving forward, head sliding around. It's not the same.
The true masters of the fight game.
Right. I'm talking about a person who's untrained, standing there, shoulders square,
Chin
It's
forward because they're acting.
standing there, shoulders square, and they're jutting their head out at you, and you have a clean shot right into the middle of their body. What's going to happen to that person? We know what's going to happen. Their rib cage is going to cave in onto their spine, and they're never going to be the same ever again.
Yep. Sensei Suino, let's go to you. Are you on this topic or you want to drop something new for us?
Well, this topic extended a little bit further, and this is something I think we've touched on in other episodes, but I'd love to go around again. What if you end up in that slugfest or that roll fest with some really stubborn, son of a bitch who doesn't give up, and you get hurt in the middle of it? Has that happened to you, right? In a striking match or a rolling match or a judo match? And if so, what was the experience like? And then, any lessons to take out of that? So have you gotten hurt in the middle of any kind of fight, match, roll, tournament? How'd you persevere through it? Randy, what do you got?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's happened lots of times. Cracked ribs, punched in the head, like where your ears are ringing, and it's like you're stepping into another realm, right? Like where like cats have wings. And I don't know, the few times that it's happened to me, many of the times actually, and if I'm being totally honest about it, it's in the dojo, right? And it's with like people like Sense Legacy or Sean or Scott Barron, or like those are the people who have really rocked me the most, which I guess is not quite the same as what you're talking about, Sense, because those people let up. They let up, right? Like when Sense Legacy has hit me and hurt me, he lets up after he hurts me. He's not following up with like 2 or 3 more devastating blows. So there's a level of safety there. But I mean, for me personally, when at all possible, and I think your level of mental tenacity plays a part in this. And it was told to me, like it was trained to me. Just maintain the same look and composure. Train yourself to maintain the same look and composure. When you bow and you enter the ring, have that look in that zanshin. When you score a nice clean point and you hurt the other person, have that look in that zanshin. When they hit you and score on you, look at them with that same look in that zanshin. If they hurt you, try and, be defensive and have that same look and that same zanshin. If you don't give them things to react to, they can't react to them. Right. But the second you're like, oh, and I just know that from my side of it. When I've hurt people and I've heard them go, ugh, or when I'm moving around with them and they take that first deep breath, they're like any of those things, when I'm moving with them, I'm like, okay, now's my time to shine. Like you've just threw some of your cards down on the table. I know where you are right now. So I guess that I think you should handle it by not keeping your cards close to your chest, not letting them see them.
Yeah, excellent point. Hachi, what about you? In the midst of battle, have you gotten hurt? I'm sure you have. And how'd you handle it? Any lessons to be taken from it?
Yeah, well, just I just sort of want to put a little thing in front of it there. When you get into fighting, expect to get hit. That's what I tell my brand new students. So there's no surprise, And then once you're doing point sparring and you get hit a couple of times, you start getting used to just letting go of the pain. Fighting in my first black belt fight, um, fought a guy at the Toronto National Exhibition, and I was fighting for first place. And I was just given a black belt that day, honest to God. And when I was fighting these guys, his name was John Lafitte. And I try to fake him like this, and he just sit there calm, and then I try to rush in. He hit me with a punch. I actually saw my feet out in front of me like this and landed on my back. And then I got back up. But that was because I did a lot of fighting, and I wasn't shocked by the knockdown. I'd been knocked down by a lot of good guys before. But another thing about that is that I've unfortunately been in a couple of street fights, and it only takes a quarter of a second to throw a punch. I'm a trained martial artist. Nothing ever went past my first punch. So I'm not trying to brag here, but I'm trying to tell you, if you train hard and you're calm and you let, people start thinking, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to hit him here. You just need to empty your mind so that everything that you trained, your body knows what to do. Don't get in your own way. And if you know it's only going to take you a quarter of a second, you can almost pick a quarter of a second out of any fight and be able to deliver that technique. Right? So you got to be a bit tough, learn how to take it, and then realize how long it takes to finish that fight. And the last statement is going to be, the longer the fight is, the more of a chance you've got of getting hurt. That's that. Learn how to hit.
Sean, in the middle of battle, you get hurt, injured or hurt, high level of pain. Has it happened to you? If so, how'd you deal with it? Any lessons to be taken from it?
Yeah, so this is training. I've not been in that kind of street fight where that's happened. So just to be clear, I've been hurt so many times. And I mean cracked ribs, I mean torqued knees, and actually this is a compliment to Sensei Dauphin. Nobody's put me on my ass more. And if I'm picturing it and the right hand's on the ribs, but that left hand cutting across, bang. I mean, straight shot to my face where I get knocked down and then don't have a bloody nose or a broken nose. I'm just saying that the compliment is the control. But the point is that I've had many popped, broken, or whatever you want to call them ribs. I just keep fighting because to me, that's the point of the training. And I've never been hurt in a way that I was like, I got to go to the doctor. There have been times, like what Sensei Dauphin said, because it's a percussive thing where that happens and he slows down a bit. He sees what's going on. He sees I'm going to keep fighting, but doesn't hit the exact same spot right away. So it's not quite what some bro in a street fight might do. But I remember, look, I do think at a certain point, I remember the Corkla twins, right? These two pretty muscular at the time, they were brown belt. I fought one after the other. I was either yellow or green belt. I don't remember when I first got rocked in like a real way, like bang, felt a big crack. Back of my head felt like it exploded. And I just looked and I went, I'm fine. And that's been my thing ever since. And I will say this, Sensei Suino, that in my experience, because of the percussive nature and that little bit of a pullback with people who are hitting me hard, but I trust, that's different than grappling. because I've been injured in grappling in ways that people don't realize and kept going. And that's almost a way I've been able to find a different fortitude. Like even 2 weeks ago, I got kneed in the nose about a minute into a 5 minute round, and my nose just started gushing. And as I'm lying there, and the guy ended up getting some position I didn't love, I was like, okay, if my nose is broken, it'll heal in time before I shoot my next TV show. All right, keep going. And I was swallowing blood and it was dripping down for a good 3 minutes. And then with 20 seconds to go, he's, buddy, you're bleeding. I said, yeah, we're good. And he goes, did I get you? I was like, yeah, you need, it's fine. But my point is there was no reason to stop. And for me, it's important to keep going, even though I know it's within me, when I know I'm not going to make the injury worse, right? Hurt versus injured. So the lesson to me with training partners is hurt's fine, injured, maybe pause. Yeah, pause. But I like it. I like it. That first time I got hit by whichever of those corpolas it was, I went home feeling very proud of myself that I could take that shot and keep fighting. And I needed to know that about myself. I didn't come into karate a tough guy. I did not. I came to get that. And so I needed it. And so that maybe that's my lesson is if you're coming to fight, enjoy the fight.
Yeah, expect to get hit. I love that. I'm glad you took it to the grappling round. I think the most recent memory I have of a situation like that, I probably made it worse myself. I was rolling with a guy that I later kicked out of JMAC just because he was not a nice person and a little too mean to the other students. But he liked to roll hard, and I like to roll hard, but he outweighed me by 60 pounds. And I don't remember how it happened, but which one is this? The SC joint popped out in the middle of the fight, and just had that whole adrenaline dump, hot flash, see red pain thing. It was pretty bad, but I caused this myself. I was like, I am not giving up to this guy. Right? I'm not giving up to this guy. And so I kept rolling with him through the pain and eventually tapped him with a choke. And uh, I probably should have finished that choke. I think Randy will laugh at that. But
Didn't feel the tap.
yeah. But just working through that pain, it lets you know you can do it. And I think you're right. If you're in a tournament setting or a setting where you can stop the action and you think it's going to make it a lot worse, you probably should, right? So you can keep going again. But I think all of us as martial artists need to be able to move through pain and minor injuries if we can. At any rate, I know that we have Copeland Sensei on the call. He has a question, and Randy, you're gonna bring him on camera,
I'm going to.
and let's hear from the man himself.
Hey,
Oh, you unmuted and then muted. The fifth beetle. Here he comes.
That's it.
Hello,
Hello.
my friends. Good morning. How are you guys doing? Everybody looks great. Awesome.
How are you?
I am absolutely beautiful.
Long time no see. It's been like 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, I'm finally recovered.
You don't have your ears on though. Since you don't have.
That's okay. I've had something to eat since then, and they've rescinded. They're back to normal now.
did you have hot ears after the rolling, Sensei?
What was that?
Were your ears hot after that rolling?
No, I was worked like a donkey at the tournament.
Right.
Donkey ears,
Mhm.
That was really funny when you said that. I mean, that just totally caught me off guard, but it was very funny. Are you happy now? And
You
should I
did
get
work.
paid?
You did work really hard for us, and we really
Well,
all day long.
well, we have this thing, right? Help our brother out.
We'll be there in June, Sensei.
If you're able to, that be fantastic. If you're not, I know you still love me. It's all good.
We will be there.
We'll be there.
So my question was, and I think I might have came into the discussion a little bit late, was can you do the martial arts to its full extent without the fight element? And I was just listening to the question about getting hurt in a competition. Can I just share a little bit, just a small bit?
Please.
The WKO World Championships, I think it was 1998 at the Wild World of Sports in Florida. We are in a championship match, and I had my lower two front teeth knocked out. They're just hanging. They're just hanging. And back in 1998, early 19s, mid 90s, you fought for real. One of my guys, his orbital bone broke, but one guy had a finger, went to 90 degrees in the middle of the match. You fought hard back then. So it wasn't so much tapping, and in between the match, when we had that break, I went out to the side, to the coach, and it was actually Phil McCall. He says, your teeth are out. And I says, I'm like, no. He says, do you feel like fighting? I said, what's the score? So he literally took his fingers and pushed them back into the gum, put the mouthpiece back in, and went in and finished the match. So it all depends on where you're at during that match, whether or not it's going to take you out of the game or give you more fight in the game. They say about the dog, it's not about the size of the dog, but the size of the fight in the dog.
Agreed. And
Sensei
you won that fight too, right, Sensei Copeland?
Oh, yes. Punch me in the mouth, I'm going to win the fight.
Sensei Copeland, if I can just add to that, there's a famous Gordon Ryan, the best grappler in the world, where he had torn his knee to the point like ACL shredded, MCL shredded, and he was going into the final. And his coach, John Danaher, was like, my only question for you is, can you win? Because if you can't win, why bother wreck it more?
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. And he did. And then he went and got the surgery he was going to get anyways. But it's exactly what you just said. Like, there's times where you might not be able to win and you go, this wouldn't actually be worth the extra wear and tear. But in that case, it was for him.
I think about that all the time because for many, many years, I wore what we call a flipper, so it falls, they're clipping on the side and you can just pop them out.
There will be some kids watching, Sensei. If you keep talking about your flipper, we could get a rating that prevents this from getting out of
the false teeth, they come out, they go back in.
That's what I meant too.
But right now we're good. So that was my question was, so we get a little bit off track. My question was, can you do the martial arts to its full extent without the fight element? Because I think that's what you're talking about, fighting or point fighting or something like that, I believe.
Yep. And you get to decide the order of answering, or you can even start.
Hanshi, let's you see, I would like you to go first because you're coming from a place of more experience than all of us.
Personally, I don't think so. I mean, if you just did kata, you wouldn't overcome things. Like you wouldn't be able, like if I was a beginner or even a well-learned martial artist and I stood there and faced you, like I said originally, it's facing you in a different situation, right? It's a whole different mindset for why you're there. You're not to win a tournament. You're not to, you know that even if you get your teeth knocked out, that somebody's going to stop that. Right. So I personally feel that you need the combat. It's a martial art, right? So with that, that's where I'm going to take it and leave room for people to give their opinion.
Thank you.
You must fight. Right.
Sensei Dauphin?
I don't know if my answer, Sensei Copeland, is just because of my love of combat and fighting. So I'm not sure. I don't think if you don't do the combat, you never learn that you can push your teeth back into your gums and go in and continue to fight. I guess you can hit a heavy bag and start to feel what it feels like, but that's not going to be the same feeling as like, we all know when you hit human flesh, it's different than when you hit like a leather bag. Like it just moves different and things are different. I don't know that you have to do the combat forever, but I think you need to do it for a long time. Like I don't I don't think you can just come in and say, oh, I did combat for 2-3 years and I'm 37 years into my training now. And I remember what it was like and I'm good. I don't think, but I think if you've done good mixing it up, fighting, rolling, whatever for a couple of decades, 2 or 3 decades, at some point you can put it aside and you can still do the Budo without doing it then, I think, and still be just as deadly and just as good at it. But I think if you come into the dojo and you do an art where I don't think it's going to be so good. I think you might be able to handle some of the people some of the time, but not most of the people most of the time.
Could I just slide something in very, about 6 months ago, a lady came in and she said she was a black belt from another club. And it was just fight night. So we did fighting, and John Kittleberger, she sort of was like, she was afraid of what was going on. And after class, we asked her, we said, oh no, she asked us, she goes, well, what were you doing there? I said, well, we were fighting. You know what fighting is, don't you? And she said, no, I've never fought before. She was a black belt from somewhere. She ended up just leaving. She didn't join. So wherever she came from, they did that. To me, that's a fine example of what happens to you when a fight breaks out. Even the atmosphere, the noise, you know, everything changes in the air. Thank you.
Sensei Suino?
I just thought of something while listening to these answers that's kind of interesting. You know, everything that, you know, I do karate sparring, I do judo, I do randori, I do, you know, Japanese and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I roll. Even in Iaido, which isn't really considered a combative art, we do bokken fencing, so we fight with wooden swords. So there's fighting in everything. There's no fighting in Kyudo, in Japanese archery. But let me tell you this. So this is really crazy, and it's kind of blowing my mind right now. I don't know where to go with it. If I put a sharpened broadhead on the end of that arrow, even though I've never fought, but I've only practiced my Zen archery, and I shoot that at a human being or an animal, and that broadhead goes into the animal, it's going to hurt or badly kill them. That's kind of fighting. And in fact, sorry, but I do that, not with the Japanese longbow, but I do that with a bow and arrow to deer, and it goes in their vitals and kills them. So that's kind of that's an exception to the rule. And isn't this, we just had somebody on the show that was talking about how archery was the first samurai martial art, right? The one you engage with first with bow and arrow while you have distance. And then when you get closer, you go to swords, and then you go to short swords, and then you go to jujitsu. So I guess my answer is every martial art I can think of, you need fighting to go with the martial art. But at the moment, and I haven't sorted this out, you can maybe correct me. At the moment, I'm thinking you don't need to fight with the bow and arrow to still be able to use it effectively when the way it was meant to be used in combat.
Just for anyone watching, that's Sebastian Valila Sensei, who you can look in one of the last couple episodes.
Right.
We had a lovely chat with him. Go check that episode out.
Well, I've never thought about that from that perspective either. So that's very interesting.
Right? I don't really know what to make of it yet.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Sensei Sean?
Thanks, Sensei Copeland. I love this question. I have one yes, but then a big no. The one yes goes back to when we ask the question, what's the greatest benefit martial arts has given you as part of our 10 questions? No person has ever said fighting. Many of them have said confidence, and we know that comes from it. But the answer we get more than 50% of the time is community, discipline, gratitude. And I think that you can get those from the martial arts. And if that's the greatest benefit that more than half our masters have gotten, you could get that without having to fight the way we're talking about. That said, I've been having fun Googling tonight the concepts we're chatting about, and I didn't even know this. The word martial comes from Mars, the Roman god of war. And I think if it's a martial art and it doesn't have some version of testing yourself within a potentially warring realm, which goes back to what Sensei Dauphin said about weapons. And it's a not 0% chance. And Hanchi Legacy mentioned that lady. I've talked about this on the show. I'll make it really brief, but I had the same experience with this really fit young black belt. His kata looked as good, maybe even better than mine. He wasn't just scared to get hit. I was working with him for the first time, and I was like, okay, just give me a shot. We'll play with concepts. And he just started to shake. I was like, what? And he goes, I've never hit anybody. I was like, you mean you've never like been in a street fight? I haven't either. He goes, no, I've never punched a human. So he had been given a black belt he was afraid to make a fist and touch my ribs with a 30% shot. So that to me is someone who doesn't have a martial art. There's no world in which that guy could use that effectively. So it doesn't have to look like some of the tougher war stories we tell for everybody. You know, if somebody were in a wheelchair, had a physical disability, I'd still suggest they have to find the best, most challenging version for their capabilities, and then they'd be getting those benefits. But so I think there's a sliver that people can get that's really awesome, but I don't think they'll get the picture, and I don't think it'll be a martial art.
What do you think, Sensei Copeland? You always have to, when the guest comes on, you always have to answer your own question.
Well, I think there's a certain true feeling to what Sensei Sean just said, but I think that's in a special area, because if you're training in the martial arts to help build your body, build your mind because of some, you know, adverse situation, then the fighting is really not that important. But I believe that most of the confidence and the you know, self perseverance, those attributes that we get from the martial arts and from other martial artists, I think most of mine has developed through my fighting with other martial artists. I mean, some of my best friends are the people that I fought the hardest with. And I don't think only kata gives you that same vibe with that other person. It's nice, but that fight, that confidence, that respect, that vibe, for me, only came through fighting. So to do it without the fighting element, I think you'd be shortchanging yourself. And it would be just a matter of understanding that you don't have to fight to get hurt, but there's a different feeling when you're standing across from your opponent and they're actually going to try to punch you. Whether they punch you hard or not, nobody wants to get punched, hard or soft. But to just, you know, do kata off with each other, you don't get the same adrenaline, the same dump. It's not there.
You know, a Jit's friend and I, we were laughing about that, Sensei Copeland. We're talking about how you can go in and you grapple 100% with some 300-pound dude. You're tossing him, he's tossing you. He flips you around, gets your ankle to the point where he could tear every tendon in your knee, and you give him a little tap on the butt, and he goes, cool. The trust. You're going all. I talked about Sensei Dauphin. I've stood in front of him shaking so many times, and with an intensity, but an absolute trust. Just this updraft keeps happening. And I think what you're talking about, because doing kata next to someone is gorgeous, and there is a breath and a feeling there, but it doesn't challenge that level of trust that I'm sort of exempling in. And I'm just expanding on what you said. I think it's in that trust, like that guy who kneed me in the nose, he was very apologetic, and we're closer now. We're like chatting on DMs every day, and like I'm promoting his club. It's like these things happen, but there was no ill intent, and you gain I don't want to say brotherhood, a siblinghood.
If I can take another minute, I was at the practical fighting seminar. I had one of the best compliments after the seminar ever. And that was, we're leaving. Walking outside, I went out, Sensei Sean was talking with one of his buddies, and he says to me, which was like pretty amazing. He says, for a guy who doesn't roll, you sure do fight hard. And that to me was coming from somebody that rolls. So I'm like, thank you, brother. That was awesome. So that to me was really nice for him to say that. I mean, he didn't have to. I thought it was a really good compliment.
Well, it's real, Sensei, and it goes to a lot of what we're talking about, which is you don't necessarily have to do all the arts to have an overlap that applies in other arts. And I just want to say thank you for the stand up and the roll, because I know you say we've sparred in the past, and I believe you. My brain is not perfect, but I'll never forget that day when we got to stand and roll. It was incredible, and we're not here to gas each other up, but when we're talking about these things, for anyone listening, like, you don't get anything free on you, Sensei Copeland. It costs even to get inside, even if that inside isn't going to land, and hopefully will, but probably won't. It's lovely.
We've created memories. That's what we've done throughout our martial arts career, competing with each other. We've created memories. So we're not gassing anybody. We're just sharing the memories. Not everybody gets to have the same feeling,
Right.
and those memories are forever.
That's what this show is about. Us riding in a car together, talking about the shit we've done and why we like it and why it's fun.
Thank you for letting me on.
Always, anytime. We have to let the fifth Beatle in every time.
Stop it. Stop it.
I'm gonna call him the fifth Rolling Stone. There was their piano player. He just played with them, but he was just like, nope.
So I have a question, which is also, I don't want to say it's self-promotion, but we do a lot of events, and I think we do a lot of important events, a lot of powerful events that help a lot of martial artists. Over the last few years, we've gotten lots of great feedback. Like, for example, at the Matsumura Challenge recently, Sensei Kanispol, who's on the call, his dad actually said to Sensei Legacy and to me that we have restored his faith in what a karate tournament can actually be, right? And Sensei Copeland's on the call. They also said they've never been to your tournament. And I said, it's the same as ours. So where I want to go with this is, for one or two of the events that we put on, I'd like you to share a memory that's not necessarily about you, something that you saw, something that happened that you were like, I'm really proud that we did this event and I saw this thing. And I'll kick it off. I'll share the first one that I want to share with all of you, and then maybe at the end I'll share another one. I really liked at the Matsumura Challenge when young Ben, and he happens to be from my dojo, when he won the grand championship, but it wasn't him winning the grand championship that made me most happy and most proud. What made me happy and proud is after Hanshi Legacy after Sensei Legacy put the trophy in his hand, like 8 of the kids from the Kitchener dojo rushed him, and they were so happy for him. They were like patting him on the back and dragging him around the room and lifting him up. And for me as an instructor, to have an event like that and then see your teaching come forward, where you're trying to teach kids about, compete, but have good morals, have good values, support your community, and then just to see it unfold in front of you, I was really proud that we can do an event like the Matsumura Challenge, where, I don't know, there's 1,000 people in that room, 300 competitors, but you can see something like that happen. I was super proud of that. Sean, what do you want to say? You've come to a lot of these events. You've come to the Practical Fighter. You've come to the Crucible. You just competed in the Matsumura Challenge. You've come to the Eido camp. What are some things that stand out that you've seen from a distance at these events where you're like, that was pretty freaking cool?
I've got 3. One is Ben Ladouceur saying that the Crucible was one of the hardest things he's ever done.
I gotta interrupt you. It's so weird because he just texted me. As you said his name, Ben just texted me and he said, nice hoodie, because I'm wearing
I look up to him so much as a guy, as a martial artist, and just to know that something that Sensei Suino offers, and we're so committed to, takes a guy who's a champ and brings him to his limit. And that to me means something because, again, a lot of people can drink their own Kool-Aid and think they're doing something they're not. And so just hearing that multiple times from him and knowing he means it. My next two are actually from the Matsumura Challenge recently. I was reffing, scoring kids synchro kata. And I mean, like, I think it was like 7-9. And there were two team captains named Nicholas, and they gave the wrong team the gold. And they weren't medal worthy, the winners. They were good, but they weren't top three. And they realized their mistake. They called them back. And watching those kids give their medals back to the guys who won and women with joy, they were like, yeah, we thought you won. And I was like, what a beautiful, like, I didn't have that when I was young. I didn't have martial arts when I was young. I'd have complained. I'd have somehow believed that I was robbed. But these kids understood where they fit and they were happy to give the medals to the winners. No one cried, no one complained, no parents complained. And the last one is, one of my brown belts, she's so focused on fighting. And recently, um, together, we've reinvigorated her joy of the complete picture of martial arts. And watching her get silver in kata, in a kata that she'd worked really hard on and really upped her game. And when I watched her do it, it was better than I'd ever seen her do it. Pardon me, she got bronze. And she was as happy, if not happier, with that bronze than her fighting medal. And so for me, it was the idea that somebody was getting a broader sense of a classical martial art through the thing they didn't go to win, even though you're not going not to win, but it was really nice to see someone that proud of their bronze, more so than the other one, even though they were happy with that too. So those three really stick out for me.
Awesome. I'm struggling here with who should I go to next, and I think I'm going to go to Sensei Legacy next. So Sensei, of the events that we do together, Matsumura Challenge, Practical Fighting Seminar, any of these things at a distance when you're standing there, what are some of the things you've seen people, could be specific, could be general, that stand out to you?
I have to say, because this was was it 48th or 49? 48th. It was our 48th tournament. And, the people that come to it, like Sensei Copeland and Duck and Espel, there are a lot of martial arts who actually make that possible. And they come back every year. They give their time every year. So I just think it's an idea that was put together, and I appreciate that other persons um, participate because they believe that it's a worthwhile thing. To me, that's above all the medals, all the trophies. It's the heart that and the trust and the participation of all the different schools that come. Really, that's if you have a party, nobody comes, it tells you something, right? And if you have a party and everybody comes, that tells you something else. So um, I'm just happy to say that I helped build this house and everybody's enjoying it. That's what martial arts to me is.
Love that, Sensei. That's great. I helped to build this house. People are enjoying it. I love that. It's a great analogy. Suino Sensei, what these different events you're often watching? This is something that if you don't know, Suino Sensei and I, after, it's often, hey, what's one thing that stands out to you about this event? Like this is something that often is asked of many people. So I'm just kind of turning the tables on everybody here, ripping off his question.
Well, interestingly, listen, the Matsumura Challenge was filled with cool memories, great people. I absolutely love that event, and I'm so grateful that you guys, have brought the JMAC crew into it more and more. It's been a huge blessing for us. But let me talk a little bit about Practical Fighting Camp and our EIDO events. So and it just so happens that my memories coincide with some of the people that are still on this call right now. Sensei Knispel has come to a lot of our EIDO, or a lot of the times when I've taught EIDO, certainly at Capital Conquest and in our events. And Sensei Knispel is somebody who loves martial arts, eats, sleeps, lives and breathes martial arts. And when he comes to my mat and trains with me in EIDO, I just feel so validated, because he brings all of himself to it, gives absolute focus, and always raves about the experience, right? So that's one of those people that you're just like, yeah, you know, I hope he comes back. So that's always wonderful. And then speaking of that, at Practical Fighting Camp, Nick Stravulis was so grateful and wonderful after Practical Fighting Camp that he actually said something in the dojo. But then when we left, going out to our cars, he was in his car and actually stopped me, and we had a chat afterwards. And it was super cool to hear somebody reinforcing what we do so much, so effusively. And then the last piece I'll share is, I love the fact that I'm at this stage of my life and I'm slowly getting better at striking and just having so much fun at all the karate work that you guys help me and the other JMackers with. And to be able to spar with Copeland Sensei at Practical Fighting Camp was just awesome, because I've always heard so many tales of his abilities. And there was no doubt. We only went at the striking part for a minute and a half, but I really learned kind of where I am and where he is, and it's very motivating. So that's a great memory to have, and it keeps me inspired when I'm in the dojo.
Well, thank you. And we only have 1 minute, but I'm going to just share two more things for me. One thing is, I really just, whatever the event is, I just love the energy when the event, it's such a contrast. So when we do, say, practical fighting seminar, you do EIDO seminar, you have lots of people who've never done EIDO. Like, this isn't just for the experience, this is for the inexperienced too. And I don't know, I said this to Sean recently when he came on a Friday night. When I come in here on a Friday night to fight and I'm putting my stuff on, I can feel the nervous energy in the room. It's almost, you can almost like taste it, smell it, see it. Like, people are, not everybody, like, but the majority of the people have this very nervous energy. And then it's very interesting to watch how they just become immersed in what they're doing, and then that goes away. And then you would think, after doing like 5 hours of striking and rolling, that people would be dragging themselves out of the dojo, that they'd be like crawling out to their cars. Or when we do the crucible, after 12 hours, you'd think people would be like, but inevitably, they leave, and there's this, I'm sure when they get home, if they're like me, you eventually get home and then you sit down and then you're like, you just die. But there's that moment when the event is done where like, you can just tell people don't want it to end. They're hugging each other, they're talking as they leave, they're stopping their cars to share a moment, do a thing. I think it's one of the coolest things about the events that we do is the beginning, there's this tension, this nervousness. Then you get into this thing where everybody just forgets all that. They're doing their stuff. And then in the end, they're sweaty, their uniforms are hanging off of them, and they're smiling, and they have more energy than when they started. That's something about these events that stands out to me. Even if we're talking about Camp Bushi, kids come on the first couple nights, they're in their tents, they're crying, I want my mom. I'm like, I've got bit by a bug. By day 6, their parents come, they're crying for a different, I don't want to go home, I want to stay here forever. When is karate camp going to be again? It's just so it's such a privilege to see people go through this arc. For EIDO camp, the thing that I think is really cool is how many people come that have no idea how to hold a sword, do a sword. And it's really nice to see you can clock it as the weekend goes, how better people get. And it's interestingly, because sometimes we forget who they are, but then they show up at, say, a mat at Capital Conquest, and you're like, hey, your EIDO's pretty good. Who'd you train with? And they're like, I trained with you. Right? And you're like, oh, sorry, I forgot. Sorry, I've been punched in the head a lot. But those are two of the things I want to share about our events. When you come, when we do these events and we say like practical fighting seminar, you don't have to be a fighter to come. You're going to be really safe when you come, and you're going to go through this arc. It's great people in the room. You want to go to the EIDO camp? come to the Yaddo camp. Even if you don't know Yaddo, you might learn to love it. You want to come to Camp Bushi, but you're an adult and you're thinking it's a kids camp, you're wrong. You're going to have a blast doing the camp with people and you're going to feel good at the end of it. I guess that's what I want to share. And we're at 10:03 and we're over. So I'm sorry that I've droned on.
I love what you just said. You taught me really early on, like 90s. The more energy you put out, the more you will get back from the room. And I even feel that way with this show, right? We keep doing it and then we just keep getting more back than we're putting out. And if anyone wants to add anything, we can, or we can leave that as the button.
Just thank the crew.
Let me thank the crew, everybody. We're so grateful that you're here for the people who were watching tonight. And the reason you know to watch us is because of Robert Slumsky, Justin Shea, Andrei Sedashev, Alden Adair, Josh Kitchens, Christiana Landolt, Dridi Giuliani, Stavros Stavroulias, and Emily Ruth Driscoll. Keep the ship running. We got a micro next week, right? We got a nice show for y'all. Are you going to love that one? And we're going to love coming back to you with more content after that. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Have a great night.